Unit 4 Quiz 2 review. So we're going to go over what you need to review for Unit 4 Quiz 2. So let's take a look at number 1. It asks you to find the value of D and F in the parallelogram below. So first of all, let's take a look at F. Now if you remember back from last trimester, in order for it to be a parallelogram, opposite sides need to be equal to each other. So that means that this side and this side need to be equal. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set those two equals to each other. So 3f minus 6 needs to equal 2f plus 8. So the first thing I want to do is get my f's on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 2f from both sides. So 3f minus 2f is just f. Then minus 6 is going to equal 8. Now, in order for us to get f, we need to add 6 to both sides, and then 8 plus 6 is going to be 14. So then I get that f is equal to 14. Now another rule we learned about when talking about parallelograms is that consecutive interior angles are 180 degrees. So those two angles represent consecutive interior angles for that one. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's add those to 180. So 56 plus 3d minus 2 is going to be equal to 180. So now I'm going to take my 56 and add it with my negative 2. So then I end up getting 54, and that's going to be equal to 180. So I want to get that 54 to the other side, so I'm going to subtract 54 from both sides. And then I get that 3d is equal to 180 minus 54, which is going to give me 126. Now that 3 is being multiplied by the d, so to get it over to the other side, I need to divide both sides by 3. When you divide both sides by 3, you end up getting 42. Now here we're talking about a degree measure, so I want to make sure I put the degree symbol there. Next, let's take a look at number 2. It asks which of the following properties is a property of a parallelogram. So here you want to pull up your notes on parallelogram and see what defines a parallelogram. That the diagonals are congruent. Okay? That's not necessarily true. We don't know that. That's not one of our properties. The diagonals bisect the angles. So that means if you had a parallelogram and you were to look at your angles, that means that each of these are equal parts. Well, we don't really know that, so we're going to throw that one out. Okay, diagonals bisect each other. So that's saying that if we cut through the diagonals, that each part on either side of the other diagonal is going to be congruent. Okay, maybe. There are 3 diagonals. Nope, there's no way we can do 3 diagonals. So the answer is C, that the diagonals bisect each other. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 3. And it asks which of the following is a property of all rectangles. 490-degree angles. Well, that sounds true about rectangles for me, but I'm going to check the rest of them just in case. Diagonals bisect the angles. Not necessarily true. Diagonals are perpendicular. We don't know that. 4 congruent sides, no, that's not true because the opposite sides need to be congruent, not just 4 congruent sides. So then the answer is A, that it has 4 90-degree diagonals. That makes it distinctly a rectangle. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 4. For the rhombus, it wants us to find the measure of angle 1. And this one is actually really easy if you know your properties of rhombi. And so we know that all diagonals in a rhombus are perpendicular, which means that angle 1 is a right angle. Now remember that a right angle is 90 degrees. So for number 4, it's 90 degrees. Taking a look at number 5, for the parallelogram, it asks us to find the measure of angle 1. Now this one probably looks more complicated than it actually is because we don't actually need this 120 degrees. That's an extra piece of information they gave us that doesn't actually require us to use it. So what I do know about 36 and 1. So we know if it's a parallelogram that those two lines are parallel to each other and that we have a transversal cutting through it. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw the transversal part on here. So it was given to us that this angle was 36. And now angle 1 is the equivalent right there if you were to just focus on the interior angles of that parallelogram. So if you think back to Unit 2, these are alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles are always congruent. So that's going to be 36 degrees. Now let's take a look at this. It says that ABCD is a rectangle, and AC is equal to 5x plus 2. So AC, this diagonal, is 5x plus 2. And then the other diagonal is x plus 26. Now another property of a rectangle is that the diagonals equal each other. The diagonals are congruent. So that means we can take 5x plus 2 is equal to x plus 26 using properties of a rectangle. So now I want to get this positive x over to the other side, and I do that by subtracting. 5x minus x is 4x, and then plus 2 is equal to 26. So now I need to get that minus 2 over to the other side, and I get that 4x is equal to 24. Now that x is being multiplied by the 4, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and I get that x is equal to 6. So that's my final answer for number 6, is that x is equal to 6. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 7. The diagonals of a square ABCD intersect at E. If AE is equal to 2x plus 4 and BD is equal to 6x minus 10, find the length of AC. Well, first thing I know is that AC is going to be congruent to BD. So this entire length of BD is going to be 6x minus 10. Okay, so we're starting there. And then just AE is 2x plus 4. But we know in a square that the diagonals bisect each other. So that means that this other side is also 2x plus 4. So to get the entire length of AC, we're going to have to do 2x plus 4 plus 2x plus 4. And that's going to be equal to the entire length of BD, which was given to us as 6x minus 10. So now we're going to go ahead and solve this. So first thing I want to do is I want to combine my like terms on this side. 2x plus 2x is 4x, and 4 plus 4 is 8, and that's going to be equal to 6x minus 10. So since this is a smaller number of x's, I'm going to subtract the 4x to the other side. 6x minus 4x is 2x, and then minus 10. So since that 10 is being subtracted, I need to add it over to the other side. And then I end up getting 18 is equal to 2x. Divide both sides by 2, and I end up getting that x is equal to 9. So now I know that x is equal to 9. Well, to get AC, I can actually plug it into the formula for BD since they are congruent. So 6 times 9 minus 10. Well, 6 times 9 is 54, and minus 10, 54 minus 10 is 44. Okay, so that's your final answer for number 7. Now let's take a look at number 8. So we're given a quadratic with certain vertices. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's plot these vertices. So we're going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 2. And that's going to represent point A. For point B, we're going over 5 and down negative 1. And that's going to be B. For C, we're going negative 2 down 1, so that's going to be C. And for D, we're going negative 2 up 2, which that's going to be D. Does this look like a rectangle? Absolutely, but in geometry, we just can't assume it's a rectangle. So we're going to figure out if it's a rectangle by seeing if the diagonals are congruent. So the first thing I'm going to do is calculate the distance between A and C using that distance formula that we've grown to be so fond of. Okay, so AC is equal to the square root of negative 2 minus 5 quantity squared plus negative 1 minus 2 quantity squared. So that's going to be equal to negative 7 squared plus negative 3 squared. Now remember, whenever you square a negative, it's going to become a positive, which becomes 49 plus 9, and that's going to give me the square root of 58. So when I actually take the square root of 58, I get 7.62. Again, we're trying to determine if the diagonals are congruent, and if they are congruent, then we know it's a rectangle. So for BD, okay, so for BD, we're going to do negative 2 minus 5 quantity squared plus 2 minus a negative 1. Now remember, when you subtract a negative, it's going to become plus a positive. So here I'm going to have negative 7 squared when I add negative 2 minus 5. And then 2 plus 1 is going to be 3 and then squared. So 7 squared, again, positive 49. 3 squared is 9. And then again, I get the square root of 58, which is 7.62. So I see that my two diagonals are congruent, which means that I do have a rectangle. I know for sure that it's a rectangle. So that concludes your note review worksheet video. So you can go ahead and take the quiz once you are ready. Thanks for listening.